Hello, and welcome to another World of UX podcast. This is your host, Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. A special welcome, as always, to those of you who are tuning in, listening to the podcast for the very first time. Welcome to all of you. Today, we're going to dive into a new topic. We just shared some potpourri sessions and some talking shop sessions, as we call them recently. And we have some additional talking shop sessions coming up in the not too distant future. I always love talking to my peers in the UX world and sort of sharpening saws, if you will, with them and sharing thoughts and just getting things out there for people in the UX community to partake of so that everybody can be vaulted forward. Today, we're going to share just a quick address, if you will. It almost comes across as something, or will come across like one of the potpourri sessions, because we're basically going to be just talking about a few subtopics. But there was something that I experienced recently, and it just made me think about how that in the UX community, just thinking about how people think, how from a groupthink perspective, what kinds of things do you normally see? What types of things do you normally hear? Those of you that might not be that familiar with me, I do interact with people in the UX community from all over the world. I just got back a month ago, I should say spoke a month ago in Graz, Austria, where I was there talking about the state of the discipline of UX and what we needed to do in order to triage. What can we do to get us back on track? And the things that I talked about, which I'm going to share in the podcast soon as well, the things that I talked about when I was there in Graz were not just based on my observations, but they were based on a lot of conversations that I've had with people. People talk to me about their experiences. They talk to me about their challenges. They talk to me about their observations. They talk to me about how they dealt with certain things. As a true UX professional, it's never about a sample set of one. That goes for me too. So while I do share my stories from time to time, I know that it's critical to share what the vision is from a large perspective, from a broad perspective. How are people thinking? What are people doing? And what do we need to do as a group, not as an individual? What do we need to do? What types of things can we do as individuals to vault the discipline forward? What kind of things can we do as a committee of one that impacts the whole, that will be in everyone's best interest? These are the types of things that we talk about on this show. These are the types of things that I seek to address on this show. These are the things that reflect my heart. It's not about me in any way, form, or fashion. It's not about vaulting me forward. It's not about what I think, what I feel. But I will share with you, I am being honest, I am being transparent, and I will share with you what I see. I will share with you what I know. I stopped counting. I kept saying 28. I have 29 years of experience in the discipline this year. So I've been around a bit. I'm not one of those people who's trying to put myself out there. I'm not one of those people that's trying to act like I have this really heavy voice that really amounts to all of 2 years or 2 months. In some cases, some of the things you see out there, that's a crime. People shouldn't be doing things like that, but they are because they want to be top dog. They want to be somebody that's seen as someone that they are not. We're trying to, if you want the discipline to go forward, we've got to make sure, sort of rephrasing what I was about to say, we've got to make sure that how we represent the discipline is accurate, how we represent the discipline is beneficial, how we represent the discipline helps those outside of the discipline, our stakeholders, our clients, our leadership, to understand what UX is, because it's not until they perceive UX and its value proposition accurately that we'll go forward. So at any rate, sort of a precursor today. Today, I want to talk to you about, again, something I've been observing, something that really stirred me up. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to talk about this on the show. Today, I want to talk about UX and what I'll call the culture of unrealistic expectations. When we have unrealistic expectations, any of us, it will cause us to behave the wrong way. It'll cause us to set our trajectory on the wrong angle. It will cause us to speak things that we shouldn't. It'll cause us to fail to be something I talked about in Gratz, being an accurate ambassador of the discipline, which we all are, whether you like it or not, and whether you knew it or not, whether you never considered it before I said it. Every person occupying space in the discipline of user experience is an ambassador of the discipline. So ethically, we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the discipline. We owe it to the people that we service. We owe it to our customers, to our users, to do the right thing and represent things properly. And we cannot do that if and when we have unrealistic expectations. So I just want to go down really a short list of expectations that people have. And again, it causes us to behave improperly. It causes us to behave irrationally. It causes us to misrepresent things. It's a huge crime, I should say, against those coming into the discipline, because some people have these unrealistic expectations and they just hand them down to new people that are coming in. I'm here to say, stop. This is a discipline that is heavily reliant on facts. UX is a discipline that is heavily reliant on people having proper expectations when it comes to the work. We make recommendations based on trustworthy, actionable, and reliable data. That's something that's at the core of what we do. When we proceed heuristically, we're looking at trustworthy, actionable, accurate information. We have to make sure that what we see and what we think is accurate. So then, that being the case, and it is, if as a UX professional, a person has unrealistic expectations, that is pretty much going to muddy the waters. And there's no way that a person will have unrealistic expectations and then produce the types of things that people need to see, hear, think, or do. And there's no way that when a person has unrealistic expectations, that they're going to foster that with the people that they service. So this is really, it's way more critical than some people would think. This is not something you're going to hear on a lot of other UX podcasts, but this is really critical stuff. So let's get to it. Unrealistic expectation number one. The first unrealistic expectation I want to address today has to do with how that entry-level people, when they come into the discipline, expectations are too high. I say this all the time. When people come into the discipline, and this is not a factoid that's just related to UX work. This is across the professional world in general. When it comes to entry-level positions are usually make up the lowest percentile of the different types of seniority levels within a given discipline. In UX, it's no different. So the newer positions, or the way it should be, because there's a little sidebar to that, which I won't get into too much right now in UX, because people keep trying to open doors for entry-level people and bringing them in, failing to realize that entry-level people are not going to profitably benefit your business until they've been there for a year to a year and a half. Entry-level people cost their teams for the first year minimally because of onboarding, because of learning how to deal with clients, because of learning the discipline and doing all of these things simultaneously. That limits that person's ability to bring value. So is it okay to have entry-level people? Of course it is, but not in high volume. The higher volume of entry-level people are on any team, not just UX, the lower the trajectory of the value that team, not just that person, but that team is going to bring, because they've got a weak link somewhere. So there's a problem. A lot of entry-level people for years, you got to give us a chance, you got to give us a chance, you got to give us a chance, you got to give us a chance. And then a lot of people were also basically coddling the entry-level people and always catering to their needs and their desires and their questions, to the extent, and I talked about this during the Sinister series, that it happened so much that people started thinking that that's what UX was. So UX started looking like an entry-level, a massively entry-level arena that actually resulted in the dumbing down of seniority levels, a jaded perspective on how long it takes for someone to reach certain seniority levels. And I just saw a job posting here recently, and it was a total travesty, where somebody was saying that they wanted a person to help lead their UX operations, and the person only had to have 5 years of experience to be in this lead role, and at least 2 of those years had to be in leadership. A person is still entry level until they're 3.5, 4 years in. You want somebody to be a lead with 5 years, and it takes 10 to 15 years to truly reach a lead status. So the organization doesn't know what they're looking for. People are applying for these roles, and a lot of entry-level people are taught apply for anything and everything. People with 3 years of experience are taught apply for any and everything. They create fatigue for hiring managers, causing hiring managers to never really, in many cases, come into contact with the person they should have hired. People are there's so many things that are going wrong today. And some people say things are great. The only people that are saying things are great are people who don't know any better. Things are not great. We've been telling people that they're not great. And the higher you are in the food chain, the more crazy you realize it is. But we won't get back into that because I'll just repeat some stuff from another episode. I really want to hit on these unrealistic expectations today. Entry-level people are thinking that they can get a job without being qualified. Entry-level people are thinking that they are qualified to get some really high-profile or high-responsibility job after coming out of a boot camp, which all they've done is basically been inundated with a lot of surface-level general knowledge, not domain knowledge. It takes years to attain domain knowledge. They're not ready. People are not ready for a lot of responsibilities realistically until they've been doing the work for a while. I talked to somebody once, and it happened to be a position that I had applied for, had an initial interview, didn't get the job. They said the standard, we decided to go with someone else and we're closely matched. You know, that little silly thing because people don't know what to say because they lack professionalism. And I'll leave it at that for now. And I knew the person who got the job. Eventually, that person was put into a lead role. That person did not have lead experience. And when I talked to that person said that, man, it's hard being here by myself. It's hard trying to address all these things on my own. The person didn't have enough experience, not only to not be a lead, they didn't have enough experience to function as a UX team of one. So, and the company feels like, well, we got butts in seats, so everything's okay. Expectations are too high for entry-level people. And people are so eager that they don't want to hear the truth. And which is an EQ red flag, frankly. You're not ready. Not ready for the entry-level job. I mean, in a sense, a lot of people be on the lookout for the entry-level job. They're out there. There are more entry-level jobs than people think. A lot of people are flipping the market and making more positions entry-level. That's because they have a low UX maturity level. That's because they don't have a true senior to really help guide those operations. A lot of companies hire people that don't know anything about UX to run UX teams. And this is what comes out of that. This is the offspring of that type of dysfunction. So the expectations, entry-level people, stop expecting the world. You might have, if you love UX, good, welcome. But you might have to do something else while you're waiting to land that UX gig. Because right now, unqualified people are getting jobs that other people actually qualify for, and it's hurting all of us, including you entry-level people. If real seniors don't start getting hired into real senior roles, then we're going to continue this downward trajectory that the discipline is on now. We need the right people in right roles, not just at the company you work at, but at everybody's company. And when that can get straightened out, then the discipline is going to start to benefit. And then leaders are going to start to see it, and they're going to start telling their leadership peers at other organizations. And that cross-pollination of cynicism that's currently going on will be addressed. It'll be countered, but it's not happening today. The fear-mongering that exists in UX circles is being furthered, is being fostered because the wrong people are in position. So I'm here to help people have the voice of reason. You know, that's what UX responsibility is. So I'm here to share a voice of reason about the discipline today. So that's number one. Entry-level folks, expectations are too high. Lower your expectations. Don't lead the discipline. Don't do anything like that, but your expectations should be realistic. Otherwise, you're not doing yourself a favor and you're not doing the discipline a favor. Number two, unrealistic expectation number two, expecting a response to every job application. Don't we hear this all the time? I applied for a job and I've applied for 300 jobs. I haven't heard back from anybody. They ghosted me. Wah, wah, wah. That's really what they're doing. It's a grown person. Grown people don't flop themselves down at the floor of a local department store and cry. They sit and do things like that. They sit and make illogical complaints. They just go on and on and on, complaining about something that really, it makes absolutely no sense when you really break it down, but they're not going to break it down. They don't spend time around people that are going to break it down, and it just continues. The problem is there's also a group of people that are into coddling. So they hear all of the crying, and they would rather say something to stroke the person's ego and make them feel better instead of helping them to drop the unrealistic expectations so we can all be adults. And so, Darren, that's harsh. No, it's not. There's nothing harsh about it at all. It's true. Here's the funny thing. Again, use the metaphor I use often. If you have a nail in your tire, when somebody tells you there's a nail in your tire, is that harsh? No. If somebody tells you that you have a stain on your shirt or on your blouse and you're about to go into a meeting, is that harsh? No. That's all we're doing. And it's funny how people will say, Darren, when I see your posts on LinkedIn, it sounds harsh. But then when I hear you talk, I can see that you really care. Yeah, I cared when you saw the post. You ascribed a tone to what I said. I say it the same. I'm saying the same exact way. I'm using the same voice and tone I'm using right now. People ascribe voices and tones based on their fear and based on their maturity level, on a personal level, and based on their emotional intelligence level. And a lot of times, if people are paranoid, they're going to hear something based on that paranoia. If somebody is being neurotic, they're going to respond based on their level of neuroticism. So, but if you're really going to be honest, then you want to just, you know what, dismiss the tone, dismiss the personality. Look at what those words are on paper. Look at what they were in the digital experience. And then, okay, is it true? If you do it, what's going to happen to you? What will you reap? What will you benefit from doing what the person said or applying what the person said? That's what emotionally intelligent people do. We don't take things personally. You sit and you look at what's being said and you move forward. And that's what we need today. Every job application is not, number one, deserving of a response. And these are not in order. I'm just mentioning them as they come to mind. Everybody doesn't owe you a response. You applied for the job. You may or may not hear back from them. Know that when you apply. When you apply, larger companies, you're definitely not going to hear back. Not something, especially that's very personal, something that is applicable only to you. You're more than likely to get a boilerplate response, which is something, sometimes people are just going to send it out because they want to be able to check a box that they sent something out. Don't expect them to say something that's going to benefit you. Don't expect these people to always say something that is going to be accurate. Yes, we looked at your application very carefully. A lot of times they had no idea what was on your application and nobody looked at it. Once I heard from somebody, I take the time to look at every application and I make sure to respond individually. And I'm going to tell you what I think. And I heard from somebody once, and this guy was behind a startup. And he responded to me. And again, people have allowed their minds to drift into this arena where they just see everybody. We're all cattle to them. And this person began to talk to me as if I was an entry-level person. He began to say things to me as if I don't know myself. And the things that he said were absolutely ridiculous. So a lot of times people say, I'd rather hear back than be ghosted. Being ghosted a lot of times is the best thing that can happen, because as I tell people often, people assume that hiring managers actually know what they're talking about. They assume that hiring managers know how to evaluate talent. They don't necessarily know how to evaluate talent. They know how to run their department. Doesn't mean they know how to evaluate talent at all. I mean, here's a challenge for some folks. I do this from time to time. And I've encouraged other people to do this from time to time. And I'm going to challenge those of you under the sound of my voice today. Pick a company, any company, go to LinkedIn, search for that company. When you search for that company and you go to the company page, you will see several tabs. One of the tabs you will see on that page is people. Click on people. You will see the people at that company that have an account on LinkedIn. After you see the people at that company, do a search on those people for UX or product design. When you see the results based on UX or product design, take the time, right click on those individuals, multiple individuals, look at their profiles, look at their position, their title, look at their job history, look at their skill level based on what you can deduce from looking at their LinkedIn profile, and look at how many of them don't match. A lot of companies hire people and they put people in positions that they don't deserve, that they have not earned. They haven't put the time in. I can't believe I had to explain that to somebody recently. That if that's a foreign concept to earn something, that's not a foreign or that is a foreign concept to you. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Everything is supposed to be based on merit to some degree. Nobody's looking for charity cases. I talk about that from time to time. But if you look at the teams, you'll see how viable that UX team for that organization truly is. And a lot of times it's not. It's not. It's political. Sometimes I remember once there was a team, the entire team was based on a foundation of cronyism. Everybody knew somebody. Nobody was hired. Because is it wrong to hire somebody because you know somebody? No. Hire somebody because you know them? No, not necessarily. But when you have a department with 15, 20, 25 people, and the vast majority, I mean, everybody but maybe one or two, that all of these people are there because they knew somebody and nobody really knows how to do anything. And then they're not bringing value. The leaders are all like looking at these people with the side eye because they're occupying space and their salaries together cost like $3 million a year based on nothing. Yes. So when you look up and you see that eventually the whole team was laid off and you see them on LinkedIn asking for people to look out for them and to help them out, but the whole department was built on the back of cronyism. So no wonder they all got laid off. No, they weren't bringing value. They were all occupying space, hiring their buddies. You didn't even see job posts for a lot of the positions on that team a lot of times because of the cronyism that was involved. And again, it's okay to hire somebody if you know them, you know what they bring to the table. That's going to happen. But hey, folks, the entire department was based on that. And they're gone because they didn't bring value. This kind of thing. So these job applications, they're not back to the point at hand. They're not going to always respond to you. That's one of the worst things that can happen a lot of times. The only people that really, really feel like they've got to have a response are people that are usually have the lower amount of experience and they're dependent on their feedback and they trust that feedback. It's the people who've been around for a while that are really will tell you, that feedback really isn't worth anything. They don't know what they're talking about, or they're going to have you fix something that's not broken. Those of us that have been around know that. So a lot of times when people are complaining, again, laying in the floor in the department store, screaming at the top of their lungs, I want feedback. Stop ghosting me. That's all that is. All that is grown-up crybaby stuff. That's all that is. I don't need you to tell me who I am. I have a high level of EQ. I already know who I am. There's some feedback that could help, but not the kind of feedback you suppose. And it's just sad, the things that very few companies know how to hire the right way. Let's just put it out there. Let's get those expectations. Let's shoot them down. Let's burst bubbles. Shall we? Let's burst bubbles. A lot of companies, they don't know. A lot of the people that get hired, there are people that have been with companies now. They're still entry level. They've been with companies 2-3 years, and they still aren't bringing value. They're getting a check, and that's what they came in there for. Don't forget, a lot of people coming into UX, have absolutely no heart for the discipline whatsoever. They do not care about the state of the discipline. All they care about is that they're getting a check. They do not know they are ambassadors. They will not execute the office of an ambassador. They will not carry themselves as an ambassador. They just want a check. So that's just the way it is, folks. So we need to know and understand that. And it will explain some things. And people tell me all the time, I'm so glad, Darren, you talk about the things you do, because now I realize I'm not crazy. I realize I wasn't the only one seeing that. So I'm not going to stop, even though people try to stop me all the time. I'm not going to stop turning lights on in these dark rooms. I am not going to stop busting bubbles. I am not going to stop these things. It's much needed. Got to be done, folks. Remember, expecting a response to every job application is an unrealistic expectation that even if it did happen the way you want, it would not benefit you the way you expect. And so we got to come off of that. Unrealistic expectation number 3. Thinking every job posting is an opportunity. Why don't we stick with job postings for a minute? Some people think that every job posting, what a great opportunity. I see this post a lot of times, and I've interacted with this person before, and I don't think they like what I had to say to them. I don't apologize for it. It wasn't a bad conversation. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't a bad conversation, but one of the things I said was that these job postings, like one of the people I know about, they'll go harvest job postings and then do this really long post on social media sharing the job postings, and in their mind, they're doing the discipline a favor. They're actually not. That's not helping. Number one, a lot of the people who love these listings with all these jobs, they're lazy. They're so lazy, they would never go to these companies and find the jobs themselves, and they're not going to. Guess what happens if you hire one of these lazy people? Then they're going to come on board and they're going to wait for somebody to do their work for them. I have seen UXers that do that. It's a terrible thing. They make the discipline look bad. People in leadership see these lazy people and wonder what in the world is going on. Not a good thing, folks. Simply not a good thing. So they're coddling lazy-minded people. A lot of people who are not qualified, or I should say they apply for jobs they're not qualified for. And I mentioned this earlier, they cause fatigue, hiring manager fatigue. Let's just call it that. I'll coin the phrase. They cause hiring manager fatigue. So then when the person comes across somebody they do really need to look at, they're so done. They're on the 400th application, the 500th application, and they are done. They're ready to get to it. That's the kind of stuff also that forces companies to go and use AI to comb through all of the job applications. And then AI doesn't know what it's doing because AI can only do the things that are finite science oriented and doesn't know how to see a flag. You know what? This person, I need to look at this person more closely. AI is not going to help them do that. It doesn't know it, and it doesn't care. People care. AI doesn't care. And if a person that doesn't know what they're doing or is lazy, because a lot of hiring managers and a lot of HR people, about to say UX, that's still true too. A lot of HR people are lazy, and so they're lazy, and then they don't care. And so AI becomes an extension of that. I'm lazy, I don't care. Then now we have AI doing it at that level. And who in the world is going to get hired? Is it going to be somebody that knows what they're doing and actually cares? A lot of times, no, absolutely not. That's the way that it goes. But at any rate, people see these job postings. There's a couple things I want to mention about that. People see these job postings and they assume that every job post is an opportunity, and it is not. I had a social media post recently, a few of them actually, where I will take screenshots from job postings and I'll point out the red flags. See this right here? That doesn't make any sense. See this right here? That doesn't make any sense. These things are telling you that these jobs are a joke. And if a person, it was a 3-month contract for a UX/UI role. Anybody can tell, how long does it take to onboard to a job? To truly onboard? Minimum 30 days. So now you only have a 90-day contract. It's going to take you 30 days to onboard. That leaves you 60 days to do what was listed in this job posting, iterative work, how many times are you going to truly iterate over the course of the remaining 60 days of that 3-month contract? That was really silly. There's no way in the world I was applying for that. And I discourage other people from doing it also. Some people say, well, Darren, I got to bring some money in. See, and that's the mindset. There's a lot of people that just want money. That's all they're after. So they basically prostitute themselves. Yeah, I said it. They prostitute themselves. They put themselves out there for the money. They have no commitment. They have no commitment to quality. They have no commitment to the company. They have no commitment to the users. They have no commitment to the clients and the stakeholders. They just want to get a check. And there's too many people who just want a check. And then quality and integrity goes by the wayside, and it is completely neglected. Our discipline can't afford that, folks. Our discipline cannot afford that. Every job posting is not an opportunity. If you assume that it is, and you walk into an interview thinking it is, and you get the job thinking it is, it's going to be, you're probably going to get a rude awakening really, really fast when a job is not really an opportunity and it's just a butt in seats thing. And then you're going to become a victim. And the degree of abuse you're going to experience, the degree of pain you're going to be subjected to is going to be off the charts. And a lot of people listening right now know exactly what I'm talking about. You don't want to be that person. So that's it for that one. Unrealistic expectation number 4. I saw a post recently that says, stop complaining about the job market. One of those terrible medium posts. Stop complaining about the job market and fix your portfolio. And they said it as if that's a solution. So unrealistic expectation number 4 has to do with putting too much confidence in the currency associated with a portfolio. Somebody said, we need to see a portfolio that demonstrates that you have in-depth knowledge of user-centered design principles. And the funny thing is, I've seen that exact phrase on a whole slew of job postings, which means that the person who wrote the job post didn't really say that. They're not really thinking that. They saw it on a job post and thought it was cool to include. The chances of them being able to look at, a lot of times, to be able to look at a person's portfolio and deduce how much knowledge a person has about UCD principles and to understand the depth of knowledge that the person has. Guess what can't be demonstrated in a portfolio very well, folks, no matter who you are? That you have in-depth knowledge of user-centered design principles. It's not there. It's always going to come across textbooky a lot of times. And then if the use cases at anybody under the sound of my voice, because everybody differs, the vast majority are going to differ, and they're going to be all over the place. There's going to be a huge smattering of where the different use cases land. The chances of the use cases at your previous work, your previous places of work, I should say, and the one that you're applying to, the chances of them not matching is pretty high. And don't assume that people are going to look at every story that you put in your portfolio. A lot of times they're going to skim it visually. They're going to make a decision. They're going to go in. They're not looking in detail. Nobody has time, especially when you have 300, 400, and 500 people applying for jobs, and many of them are not qualified. So if a person has been exposed to, once they get to, and it's going to vary, person's going to get to the 20 level, they're done. They're exhausted. One person gets to the 50 applicant level, they're done. They're tired. They're exhausted. One person will get to the 75 and the 100 level. And at that point, they just zone out. Because I keep seeing all these people, none of them are qualified. I'm tired of looking. That's what I mean by hiring manager fatigue. I'm tired of looking at candidates. I'm going to start skimming and looking for certain things. And a lot of times, a lot of them will simply default to the portfolio that looks the prettiest. And now they're not looking at UX at all. This is the same company that said they wanted to see in-depth display of someone's knowledge of user-centered design principles, folks. People think that a portfolio is a huge currency, and it's actually a necessary evil because a lot of people, portfolios don't even mean as much as people think they mean when it comes to UX. Portfolios are more akin to a visual design evaluation than a psychological design perspective. So, and that's where you see when a person has to, if they want to know whether or not your qualifications or my qualifications line up with this stellar and in-depth knowledge of UCD principles, that person has to be aware of what's happening from a psychological perspective, because that's the only way that you can see it. And how do you even visualize that? How do you present that? Well, when you present it, guess what? Guess what it's not going to be? Pretty. And so if people are looking at a portfolio with a visual design mindset and with a mindset that's informed from a visual perspective, they are not going to be able to properly evaluate that portfolio. So hence, as the applicant, if you're aligning unrealistic expectations with what's going to go with that portfolio, you're going to be grossly disappointed. And that's the way the world of UX is now, because the world of UX is upside down anyway. And it's more dependent on and more looking at aesthetics than it is looking at actual UX. Somebody else, another article I heard about, I believe this was on Medium as well. Can't remember for sure, but I believe it was on Medium. I do remember what they said, though. A person said that it was more important to know Figma than to understand UX principles. What an absolute joke. What an absolute joke that is. So, and that's why Figma hasn't done UX any favors. It's actually, Figma has actually contributed to the mass dilution of the UX discipline as a whole. So keep singing Figma's praises all you want. They don't want a real UX practitioner at Figma. They don't care anything about that. They just care about making money. They don't care about the discipline of UX. And if things don't get right, they'll go the way of InVision. The question is, how long will it take for them to get there? It's pretty sad, folks. So stop putting too much confidence in the currency of a portfolio. Stop thinking that portfolio is going to get you the job. The portfolio alone never got anybody a job. Not really. And don't throw the outliers at me. It doesn't really. They've got to talk to you eventually. And it is something that happened during their interaction with you that helped you get the job. The just like a resume is a stepping stone to an interview, a portfolio can be a stepping stone. But no matter what the evaluators tell you, the portfolio is not going to get you the job. It's not going to get you the job. It's proving that you are in alignment some kind of way, and the portfolio is just a stepping stone to that. That's all it is. So stop ascribing that. Am I saying not to put the effort into the portfolio? No, because as I said, it is a necessary evil, but it's not what you think it is. Make sure it's the best it can possibly be. You want to represent yourself the best you can, but that does not mean that now your portfolio is worth its weight in gold. That's not the case. And it doesn't mean somebody hears me and they say, well, Darren, you said that and I got a job. And the people that hired me said that my portfolio was this, that, and the other. Then they have a low UX maturity level. At a personal level, it's not as important as people think it is. So let's put our money where it belongs. Yes, do your best with a portfolio, but be sharp. Know your stuff. That's what's going to eventually, because you can get the job based on a portfolio and lose it because you didn't know how to do your job. So, okay, yeah, does that make sense now? Is that resonating? Does that sink in? People say that a lot of folks get hired for what they know, and then they lose their job because they have poor interpersonal skills. They have poor presentation skills. They don't bring value. Your portfolio, no matter what's in it, does not guarantee that you're going to bring value. It's you knowing how to do the work that is going to help you bring value. So, and you're not going to be able to prove me wrong. It simply doesn't work that way. And people at my level, we don't make recommendations that don't make sense. So stop doing that. People want us to not make sense because it helps them to vault themselves forward, because they live in this world where getting ahead means you step on somebody else. So, and those people, it always comes back to bite them later, just so you know. But anyway, let's move on to our last one. Unrealistic expectation number 5. A lot of people think that having a background in visual design automatically qualifies them to do UX work. And a lot of the people that are in UX positions where they used to be visual designers and now they occupy these positions. They say, well, Darren, that's proof. No, it's not. I always talk about posers, retrofits, and upstarts. I've added two more models or two more categories to that model, I should say. One is thieves and the other is sellouts. And so a lot of the visual designers that occupy UX space, there are very few that actually properly transitioned into the UX world. A lot of them don't. I remember one place that I know of, and like they have like maybe 50 people in the UX department, and only 2 of them know how to do UX. The rest of them are all retrofitted visual designers. And they put these people up in front of clients, and these people do their standard visual design thing, and everybody in the meeting thinks that these people are all doing UX work, and they're not. And it's amazing how those people, when they encounter people like me, they always want to make people like me look bad because we're a threat. Because if and when somebody sees what real UX looks like, then they're going to start to question the viability or the relevance of those other individuals. So these people are always stealing ideas. God, it's happened to me way too many times in my career. They steal ideas. They try to make you look bad. They try to make it look like, oh man, this dude has this master's degree or that master's degree, or that woman has that much experience. We don't need them because we did this, that, and the other. And they do that because they're violent. They do that because they're narcissistic. They do that because they're psychotic. and a lot of people think that they can be psychotic and narcissistic, the whole 9 yards. And the person who's in charge, they're the same way. So they don't care. As long as they get their check, they don't care who's where. And none of them care about the discipline, because only people who care about the discipline want real UX practitioners to occupy these spaces. That's just the reality of it. So just because you have a visual design background, degree, art director, creative director, you want to be in UX? Welcome, fine. But you have to transition. That is an ego-driven arena. The world of visual design, the world of UX design has to be ego-free. And when you bring ego into this, somebody's going to suffer. You, your team, your users, your customers, your stakeholders, your clients, somebody's going to suffer, or everybody's going to suffer. Lose the ego if you want to be over here. The fact that you have that background does not qualify you just because some company said it does. As an ambassador with 29 years of experience, I'm telling you, it does not. If anything, it makes you a threat. And most of the people, you are the actual threat. I'm not the threat. The visual designer faking their way through UX positions, that's a threat to the discipline. We need to be better about this. We need to be realistic about these things. We need to take off the rose-colored glasses. We need to get rid of the unrealistic expectations. These are just 5 that I'm sharing. There are more. When you come across an unrealistic expectation, or you come to the realization that an expectation on your plate is unrealistic, be the bigger person. Admit it and let it go. Renounce it. Let it go. Embrace the truth of the thing and vault yourself and the discipline and your team and your users and your customers and your leadership and those people that are championing for you in your organization. Vault those people forward and you will be better off for it. Make sense? How about a bonus item? Another unrealistic expectation is people who say that they would like to teach UX. However, they don't meet the qualifications. And I'm talking about academic institutions of higher learning. You have to have certain degrees to be able to teach at institutions of higher learning. This is a set of requirements that has been in place for a long time. It protects the integrity of education by having this. There are people who will complain, I should be able to teach because I've got this, that, and the other. And I've heard that there are usually programs and exceptions. And there are times that exceptions are made, but the standard is that, and I'm just going to talk about grad studies for a moment. If a person teaches in graduate school, master's degree programs, those who are instructing are responsible for having required for at least having a master's degree. If you do not have a master's degree, you cannot teach in a master's program. That is a requirement. Why people think that they can have these expectations, they feel like they have actually a sense of entitlement. That lets you know something's wrong. Entitlement never works. Entitlement is not good. Entitlement is an offense to somebody. So get rid of the entitlement. I've been doing this a long time. I should be able to teach. When I found out, I said this recently and I say it again, and I'm purposely repeating this again today because this needs to get out. When I found out, when I came into the realization that you had to have a master's degree in order to teach at a master's level, then I set my sights on getting a master's degree. I didn't say, oh, I want to teach. I should be able to teach because I've been doing this for X amount of years. That's what a sense of entitlement says. That's what arrogance says. That's what somebody says when they refuse to comply with an institution's requirements. And by institution, I'm not talking about the university now. I'm talking about the institution of academia and education as a whole. Education demands that you do X. So if education demands that you do X, then you do X. So I realized this is what's required. So I went and I did it. I didn't cry. I didn't make any demands. I didn't say this is unfair. I went out and I qualified myself. If you want to do this, anybody out there, you have to qualify yourself. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The exceptions are going to happen so far and few between that you never really hear about it because there are some exceptions. But no, a person, and I mean, you already have teachers that aren't qualified. Yeah, I said it. You have people that are teaching in institutions of higher learning and they're not qualified. You have institutions where people are bringing in their buddies to teach, even though they don't know the subject matter and they really aren't good teachers. They just happen to have a PhD and they want to check. So now somebody's paying the price for that person's zeal without knowledge component, which means that there's nothing there but arrogance and entitlement. I got a PhD. I deserve to have this. And I also know of situations where people were trying to get a full-time job in academia, not because they cared about the program, not because they cared about what was being structured or what was being stressed, I should say, in the program, what the program was structured around, the discipline, the specialization of a particular degree. They just wanted somebody to fund their research. They didn't care about anything else. And so one person had a PhD, wants to help the other person get the funding for their research. So they're here interviewing these people. None of them are qualified. I saw a situation like that. None of them was qualified for that role, but they were all the finalists for the role. Why? Because they all had PhDs. None of them cared. So they came to the interview pretending to care. And I knew it because I was a practitioner. So I knew that none of these people deserved it. And I told the school that. Guess who ended up being virtually lynched? Guess who ended up being the bad guy? Me. And they probably gave the job to one of them and the whole program is suffering for it. So this is the kind of thing, folks, you have to meet requirements. When you apply, I said earlier, people applying for jobs they don't qualify for, and then they cause fatigue. There's people being in the wrong place at the wrong time, thinking they're entitled or they're because you want something, they're doing the the crybaby thing. They're being bratish about it. Do the right thing. Be emotionally intelligent. When you see a job posting, evaluate your qualifications for that job. Look at every requirement and evaluate yourself. Are you really a fit? From that perspective, you don't have to be 100% qualified. Sometimes companies will work with you if they know that you are at least you meet most of the qualifications. Every job I apply for, I meet all the qualifications. They tell me that they went with somebody else. They went with somebody who wasn't even qualified. And I know that in many of the instances, because I know, like the story from earlier, a lot of times I know who got the job. And I know they didn't qualify for the job, but people don't care about that. But at any rate, it's really sad that people want the institution of education to lower their standards so they can benefit. How selfish is that? So, and when you're selfish, other people suffer. We can't do that today. We simply cannot do that today. And so those unrealistic expectations that folks need to lower their standards to accommodate you, not a good thing. Those are the rantings of a spoiled brat. So frankly, it is. I don't like what you said, Darren. That doesn't change it from being true. It's true. It's the rantings of a spoiled brat. So let's keep it that way. Okay. So again, sadly, some people are in the business. All these things I've mentioned today as we wrap up here, Some people are in the business of coddling folks. The people have these unrealistic expectations, but they rather make these people feel better about their unrealistic expectations instead of challenging them to have a right or a proper mindset. So I'm challenging you today. I'm going to be your friend and I'm going to challenge you. Have the right mindset. If you need to tweak anything about you when it comes to how you qualify, the way that you align with those expectations, or what expectations you should have about these things, I challenge you, be and do that. You're going to be better off for it in the long run. You're going to be happier in the long run because you ended up adjusting, aligning with what it was you were trying to do, doing the right things, expecting the right things. Your mental health is going to be better for it. Your perspectives are going to be better for it. Your trajectory is going to be more realistic. Everybody around you is going to be better off for it. That's when we're benefited, folks. That's what we need to do. And folks, when folks coddle you, it does a disservice to that person who has the unrealistic expectations. It does a disservice to the discipline, right down the line, to the teams, to the stakeholders, to the clients, the users, the customers. Everybody suffers when folks coddle. So let's end the coddling today and let's have sharp vision for our expectations, sharp vision for our future, and everybody wins. Got it? All right. That's all the time we have for today, folks. So we're going to end it there. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast today. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, this produces the YouTube too. Don't forget to give us a like to help us out with the algorithms. If you listening to the podcast and the podcast benefits you wherever you listen to it, make sure to rate the podcast. Make sure to share it with your friends. This is the kind of content that needs to get out, folks. This is the kind of content that needs to get out, not people making half-baked statements that benefit no one and mislead folks and end up with 1,000 shares and 10,000 likes, that kind of stuff. And a slight exaggeration to make the point, but it's happening. So help us to get this out as well. And the community, the discipline will be better off for it. So until next time, folks, this is Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX, signing off. And until next time, happy UXing, everybody.